Military Doctrine, Strategic Endurance, and the Persistence of Conflict, The Long Trajectory of Tzadkan Gebretensai Abstract. This article examines the military doctrine, strategic narratives, and post-war discourse associated with Tzadkan Gebretensai from the liberation struggle period through the Eritrea and Ethiopia War and into the post-war era. It argues that while Tzadkan did not rely on mass mobilization rhetoric, his strategic framing emphasized endurance, pressure, and revisionist assumptions that treated war as a tool for reshaping political outcomes. By focusing on documented actions, public statements, and historical outcomes, the article shows how military thinking can sustain conflict beyond the battlefield and obstruct reconciliation long after formal peace agreements are signed. 1. Introduction. Wars are shaped not only by political rhetoric but also by military doctrine. While politicians mobilize societies through words, military leaders influence how conflicts are fought, prolonged, and remembered. In the Horn of Africa, the Eritrea and Ethiopia War illustrates how strategic thinking can extend hostility beyond active combat, even after peace agreements are formally concluded. Tzadkan Gebretensai's role offers an important case study of how military endurance, strategic pressure, and post-war silence can contribute to the persistence of unresolved conflict. This article does not assess personal motives. Instead, it analyzes doctrine, timing, and narrative continuity. 2. Early ideology and asymmetrical struggle. During the early years of armed struggle, Tigrayan movements articulated ambitious political visions that sought regional autonomy and long-term strategic repositioning. These visions, articulated in early ideological texts and debates, proved largely unrealizable under the conditions of the time. In contrast, Eritrean movements had already developed a more consolidated military structure and international profile. This asymmetry shaped perceptions of capability and status. Although cooperation between EPLF and TPLF forces occurred, it was not based on equality of power. These early imbalances did not produce immediate conflict, but contributed to later recalibration once political power shifted. 3. Power. After 1991 and the transformation of strategy, following the collapse of the Derg regime in 1991, Tzadkan emerged as a senior military figure within a newly empowered Ethiopian state. This transformation from insurgent struggle to state authority reshaped strategic thinking. Questions of sovereignty, borders, and regional influence replaced survival-oriented guerrilla logic. Within this new context, Eritrea came to be framed less as a former ally and more as a strategic constraint. Military doctrine increasingly emphasized preparedness, leverage, and endurance rather than reconciliation or final settlement. 4. The final phase of the Eritrea and Ethiopia War. As a senior military commander during the Eritrea and Ethiopia War, Tzadkan oversaw operations that continued until the final days before the signing of the Algiers Agreement. Military pressure persisted in contested regions, and hostilities did not cease until only days before formal agreement. This pattern suggests an effort to secure positional or psychological leverage prior to negotiations. However, the continuation of fighting did not translate into decisive strategic advantage. The war concluded through diplomatic and legal mechanisms rather than battlefield resolution. 5. Strategic narratives, endurance, borders, and sea access. Public discourse associated with Tzadkan emphasized themes of strategic necessity, endurance, and national survival. Statements and commentary highlighted the importance of access to the sea and suggested that borders should not be treated as permanently fixed constraints. Such narratives reflect revisionist strategic thinking, in which agreements are seen as temporary arrangements rather than final settlements. While not constituting formal policy, this discourse shaped expectations and maintained the plausibility of future confrontation. 6. The human cost and the limits of military pressure. The continuation of military engagement until the war's final days imposed severe costs on soldiers and societies. Many combatants were never compensated for the sacrifices they were led to believe would secure strategic gains. When those gains failed to materialize, the human cost stood in stark contrast to the limited political outcomes. This disconnect reveals the limits of military pressure when it is not aligned with achievable political objectives. Endurance alone does not guarantee strategic success, and prolonged conflict often deepens grievances rather than resolving them. 7. Post-war silence and unresolved memory. Following the war, senior military figures offered limited public reflection on responsibility, cost, or miscalculation. This silence played a significant role in sustaining unresolved narratives. Without explicit acknowledgement of loss or error, grievances remained unprocessed and hostility lingered beneath formal peace. In this sense, the absence of discourse became itself a form of discourse, one that deferred accountability and allowed strategic assumptions to persist unchallenged. 8. Discussion. Doctrine as a carrier of conflict. This case illustrates how military doctrine can carry conflict forward even after weapons fall silent. Endurance becomes a virtue independent of outcome. Pressure substitutes for political resolution. Silence replaces accountability. When doctrine prioritizes leverage over reconciliation, peace remains fragile and conditional. 9. Conclusion. The trajectory of Tzadkan Gebretensai demonstrates how military thinking can sustain conflict beyond formal war. Emphasis on endurance, strategic pressure, and revisionist assumptions contributed to a political environment in which peace was treated as provisional rather than final. This article does not claim hidden intentions or coordinated plans. It shows instead how doctrine, narrative, and silence interact to prolong hostility across time. The lesson is not about individual blame, but about the enduring power of unexamined military frameworks to shape post-war realities.